जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा माई की जय, निताय चैतन्य की जय, परशुराम भगवान की जय, वामन देव की जय, गिरि गोवर्धन की जय, पंचतत्व की जय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधारा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Okay, we are doing the chapter number 14, the three modes of material nature. This is the 14th chapter, and we are doing the last verse of 14th chapter, 14.27. Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyayasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukasya ikantikasya cha. Translation: and I am the basis of impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. This is a very important verse to understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. This is a very key link between the Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. So first of all, Bhagavad Gita is also called as Gita Upanishad. Gita Upanishad, because it is the essence of all the Upanishads. Sarvopanishado gavo dogda gopala nandanaha. So that means that if all the Upanishads were to be a cow, the milk that is coming from that cow of the Upanishads is Bhagavad Gita. This is Bhagavad Gita. So this Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So this is very important information for all of us. And what is being said here is a very important affirmation, important assertion, an important fact. What is that? So it is the relationship between the Brahman, the impersonal Brahman, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. Here it is said, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. The word pratishta in Sanskrit means resting upon, or the basis of. You see, there cannot be any other meaning for that. So Brahmano hi pratishtaham means Krishna is the basis of the impersonal Brahman. So this is very important and a key significant words for us to understand that the impersonal Brahman, that is the effulgent light, okay, which is coming out of the Vaikuntha planets. This has been described here as immortal, imperishable, and eternal. This Brahman is nothing but it is coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is, Krishna is the basis of impersonal Brahman. This doesn't say that impersonal Brahman is the source of Krishna. This is a very important thing to note. Who is the source of who? Is the impersonal Brahman source of Krishna, or Krishna the source of impersonal Brahman? So Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattaha sarvam pravartate. That means Krishna is saying that everything emanates from me. So it can be anything. It can be even the impersonal Brahman also emanates from Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. That's what we have to understand. And in another verse, Krishna says, Mattaha parataram nanyat kinchidasti. That means there is nothing or no truth that is superior to me. So if you take that single sentence alone, that there is nothing superior, there is no truth that is superior to Krishna. So if you take that as true, then how can we say that Krishna is coming from impersonal Brahman? So the reason is that there is a competing theory which goes saying that Krishna is coming from the impersonal Brahman. Krishna and everything else is coming from the impersonal Brahman. Whereas Bhagavad Gita is stating, and Krishna is saying himself, that the impersonal Brahman is based upon me. It's upon me that the impersonal Brahman is coming. Okay, so let us try to understand this in detail. So here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada has given that this Brahman, the constitution of Brahman is immortality, imperishability, eternity and happiness. This is how you can define Brahman. So we see that the Brahman is the beginning of the transcendental realization. The second part or the middle part of the realization is the super soul realization of the Paramatma realization. It is a second stage in transcendental realization. And the ultimate realization of the absolute truth. Let me repeat, the ultimate realization of the absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. That is called as the Bhagavan realization. Right? The Bhagavan realization is the best realization. So therefore, it is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyati. So Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. So these are the three phases of understanding the absolute truth. Paratattvam. Paratattva means the superior truth. To understand the absolute truth, these are the three phases of understanding or three stages of understanding. And the first stage of realization is Brahman realization. So that is being explained here. And we have already seen that in the 7th chapter, Lord Krishna said that material nature is inferior. So there is a classification of the energy. The energy classification is very clear. The first classification is Krishna is saying the material nature is inferior. Inferior. Bhumirapo analo vayuhu khammano buddhirevacha ahamkara iti yam me bhinna prakriti rashtada. That means Krishna is saying these 5 elements, that is the 5 elements, the earth, air, water, ether and fire. These 5 elements are, along with the mind, intelligence and false ego, the subtle elements, they are all emanating from Krishna. So they are the separated material energy, that is the external energy or the lower inferior energy. The next verse, Krishna is saying, besides these, there is another superior energy, which is called as the living entity, exploiting the resources of the material nature, inferior nature. So now if you compare the material nature versus the living entity, the living entity is superior to the material nature. So simply put, if you take the dead matter and the living being is better than the dead matter. Or the spark which is there within the living being, which is causing it to be alive, that energy is superior to that of the dead matter, which is constituting of the body. See, the body is constituting of the dead matter. That is, the material nature is actually dead. But when there is a spark in it, that is the living entity spark, when it enters, that is when it sets into motion. So this living entity is superior. That is why it is called as a Tatastha Shakti, marginal potency. Marginal potency. So we have seen 2 energies so far. One is the inferior energy, the material nature, and the superior energy or marginal energy, which is us living entities. And beyond these 2 is the internal energy of Krishna. Right? That is the bhakti potency. The internal energy of Krishna is, see, the energy also has got classification. So even the living entities are energy of Krishna. Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate. That means Krishna has got multifarious energies. God has got multifarious energies, not one. He has got all the energies in full, and all the energies are subservient to him. And they are all dependent on him. That is Krishna. And this living entities are better than the material nature. Right? So this is what we have to understand. So what is happening is that living entity, as soon as it gets in contact with the material nature, it identifies itself with the material nature. Just like when we are entering inside a body, which is made up of the material nature, we start identifying with it. We start identifying with the body, and we start saying that this is mine. This is mine. I have done it. I have done it. And in fact, we are considering that our body is mine. That is, I am thinking that my identity is that I am this body. This is what we are confusing ourselves with, right? So this is a confusion that's happening. That is happening because of the conditioning by the material nature. Right now, we are conditioned by the material nature. Okay. So we can come out of this conditioning by cleansing ourselves, by the cultivation of the spiritual knowledge. When we cultivate the spiritual knowledge, we can come out. The analogy is just like if there is a raindrop is coming right from very far, right? And when as soon as it falls on the ground, this pure water is mixing. This pure water is mixing with the mud, and it has now become muddy water. So what was very clean water has now become muddy water. So this muddy water can be again purified, and we can come back to the original state. Originally, the water is supposed to be pure, but at the moment it is contaminated. Okay, so that's what it means. ఏం కావాలి అమ్మ నటుకు పోయి నన్ను ఎందుకు అడుగుతున్నావు? ఇక్కడికి ఎందుకు వచ్చావు? ఇక్కడ ఇప్పుడు కాదు, వెళ్ళు. Okay, so the first realization is the attainment of the Brahman conception is the first step in self-realization. Okay, the first step in self-realization is a Brahman conception. So in the stage of Brahman realized person, the details have been given in the previous verse. How the Brahman realized person acts. So a Brahman realized person is transcendental to the material nature. Okay, but that realization is not the perfect realization. He must rise up gradually to the Paramatma realization and then to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Bhagavan realization. You see? So for example, this is the competing theories that we are talking about in the Vedanta, Brahman realization and the Bhagavan realization. So while each of the schools are maintaining that they are superior, the verdict has been given by Krishna himself, saying that Brahmano hi pratishtaham, that the impersonal Brahman is, I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman. He never said that impersonal Brahman is the basis of me. He didn't say that. So, okay. So now let us see. There is another kind of a proposition that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is impersonal. And from the impersonal formless, the form has come. So that is the competing theory, which is trying to state that Krishna was originally formless, but now he has form. For that, Krishna says that those people who think that I was originally formless and now I have form, such people I call them fools. That's what Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita. That those people who think that I am originally formless, but now I have form, they're actually foolish people. It is not like that. They don't understand my eternal transcendental nature. And the impersonal theory goes on to say that the personal realization is a starting step and the impersonal is the highest step. But actually we see that inside the Bhagavad Gita, we don't see anywhere that whatever is been said, that Krishna has never said so, that impersonal Brahman is superior to him, nor did he say that impersonal realization is superior to personal realization. In fact, he has stated exactly the opposite. In the 12th chapter, when Arjuna asked Krishna that who are better, those people who are worshipping you in your impersonal form, or those people who are worshipping you in a personal way, who are better, who are properly engaged in your devotional service? Then Krishna said very clearly in the 12th chapter, verse number 2, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Maya Veshyama no ye mam nitya yukta upasate shraddhaya parayopeta steme yukta tamamataha. That means the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. So if we have to take Krishna's opinion, as the final, then we have to accept that personal worship is definitely better than the impersonal conception of life, impersonal conception of the God. That's what we have to understand. While both of them are true, that yes, God is personal and impersonal at the same time. There is no denial that there is no impersonal form of the Lord, but excessive stress of the impersonal form is unnecessary. It is not the conclusion of the Vedas, nor is the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is saying, I am formless, I am nothing. Krishna never said that, and that is not the conclusion, and it is a false conclusion. In fact, this impersonal realization is just the starting step. Like we said, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, Brahman is the first step of realization, not the last step of realization. And there are incidents in the past where those people who are like starting from the Brahman conception of life, who have come to the Bhagavan realization. That means they started with an impersonalism view, but later became personalist. This is very surprising. That because everywhere we hear the opposite. You see, okay, first of all, you don't understand that Supreme Lord is impersonal. Okay, therefore you start with some person, imagine some form and start the worship and then go to the impersonal. Okay, that is the thing that we keep hearing. But you see the story of the four Kumaras. These four Kumaras were perfect in impersonal Brahman conception of truth. And once it happened that they visited Vaikunta, they went to Vaikunta and they took the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it seems that when they saw Lord face to face, when they smelled the fragrance that is coming from the tulasi offered to the lotus feet of Vishnu, just because of that fragrance, there was a change in their heart. From an impersonal conception, they became personalist. The four Kumaras, who are the first four sons of Lord Brahma, have converted from impersonalist to a pure devotee, pure devotional service they became. That is example number one. Example number two, Shukadeva Goswami was originally in an impersonal conception. And later, when he heard Srimad Bhagavatam, he became a pure devotee. He became an advanced pure devotee. So what we have to realize is that the impersonal form is the starting point. You see, just like sunrise. So darkness is there before sunrise. Everything is dark. But at the beginning of the sunrise, even before the sun comes, there is a little bit of light. That's called abhas. A little bit of light is there everywhere. So that is like the impersonal conception. Like, okay, better than darkness. Before everything used to, I used to think that I'm the body. Everything is matter. There's no life. There's no matter. There's no difference. From there, coming to the next stage, that is, okay, I'm able to see that, okay, I'm able to distinguish between spirit and matter. Okay, but I don't know exactly if this spirit is impersonal or personal. I don't know that. So I'm in a middle state. So this is called impersonal realization. That is Brahman realization. But when the sun comes out and when it is it's like the midday sun. So the sun is shining brightly. It is very clear. The sun is there, right? You see, that is called as a Bhagavan realization. You see? So that is how it is given. And also in the Vedas, it is said, Raso vai saha, rasam hi evayam labdhavanandi bhavati. This is from the Taittiriya Upanishad. The Upanishad itself is saying, Raso vai saha. That means the Supreme Absolute Truth is reservoir of pleasure. Reservoir of pleasure. Raso vai saha. Right? So you see, saha, first of all, saha refers to him. He is full of mellows. He is full of rasa. We all know Krishna is known as the Rasaraj, right? He is the king of all the mellows, right? So that is Krishna. So therefore, the absolute truth is being referred to not to an impersonal form, which does not have eyes or hands or legs. No, that is not what it says. It says, Apani Pado Javano Grahita. This is a Vedic injunction. That means the Supreme Absolute Truth has no hands, but still it accepts what you give. If you're offering something to Krishna, Krishna will accept it. The Supreme Absolute Truth does not have hands like us. We have seen in the past, right? Multiple stories of the devotees we have seen. When the pure devotee is offering, and the Supreme Lord's hand comes extending from Vaikunta and picks up the prasad, the bhoga, and is taken away. We have seen such kind of incidents, right? So the Supreme Lord's hands are not like ours. That is transcendental hands. So this is what has been explained, right? So this living entity is Brahman. So we say Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahmasmi means the nature of the living entity is Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. Right? But beyond this Brahman, there is Parabrahman. It's so simple, right? So the word Para indicates superior. You see Atma and Paramatma. Brahman and Parabrahman. Parabrahman is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is what it is. So the thing is, we should not be confused by this monistic theory, which tries to just mix up both the spirit soul and the super soul. It's very clear. Spirit soul and super soul, they are both spiritual. They are both on one platform, agreed. But does not mean that they are both one and the same. If they are both one and the same, first of all, why there should be a separate designation at all? One is called as Jiva, one is called as Paramatma. One is Arjuna and one is Krishna. At no point of time, Arjuna is same as Krishna. You cannot say, Krishna did not conclude in Bhagavad Gita saying, okay, here is the conclusion. I am you, you are me. We are both one. Finish, close. This is a very deviant kind of a conclusion. The conclusion that Krishna gave to Arjuna is that you are a part and parcel of me. You surrender unto me, then I will give you the nature of mine. That is, you will come back to my abode. You will get my nature. That is, which is immortality. Unless you surrender unto me, you will not be able to realize me, nor will you be able to stop this cycle of birth and death and suffering which you are undergoing at the moment, life after life. So all you have to do is surrender unto me and serve me and become my devotee. This is the clear-cut instruction of Krishna. He is never saying that, do my devotional service and then you become another Krishna. You see, just like in chess we are playing. So there is a pawn that is going on the opposite side. It has become the queen. Now there are two queens. It is not that after liberation, there is two Krishnas. One Krishna himself. Now I have become Krishna. There are two Krishnas. That is not this is kind of a deviant kind of a understanding of the Vedas. It's not like that. There are no two Krishnas, nor do we become equal to Krishna, nor do we become Krishna. That is also not true. We attain the nature of Krishna. The nature of Krishna is immortality. That means we will go back to Godhead, where there is no birth, death, old age, and disease, but still we will be subservient. So for that, the best example Srila Prabhupada says is that just imagine if there is a fly that comes and sits on the throne of the king. There is a small fly which comes and sits on the throne of the king. Now the king is also sitting on the throne. The fly is also sitting on the throne. Just because the fly is sitting on the throne, the fly does not become the king. Similarly, just because we become liberated, we come to the platform of liberation, which is a platform of transcendence, and Krishna is also in the platform of transcendence. That doesn't make me equal to Krishna. Do you get that? So this is very important. So in this connection, I would like to tell you some a quick story. You see, this is the story of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he had come to Jagannath Puri, he met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was a very famous transcendentalist. He was almost like the top professor in the monism, that is in the impersonal theory. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met him and he proposed, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya proposed that I will teach you the Vedanta. Please come. I will teach you Vedanta. Okay. The Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, all right, okay, please teach me. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya started to teach Vedanta. And he goes on for a couple of days. And after a few days, he says, I've been teaching this from a long time. Look, but I don't see that you are either saying yes or no. I don't understand whether you are understanding it or not. Are you understanding or not? How do I know that you are understanding it? Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you see, I understand it very properly. I understand the Vedanta very clearly. But the theory that you are trying to impose upon Krishna, this is what I'm not able to understand. So all the Vedas, Vedic literature, it is very clear that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Absolute Truth is Krishna. It is like the midday sun, but you are trying to cover by your indirect explanations. When Krishna is directly saying, Brahmano hi pratishtaham, I am the basis of impersonal Brahman. Krishna is saying that mattah parataram nanyat kinchidasti. That is like there is no truth superior to me. Like again and again, Krishna is saying, but then you are coming with some indirect explanation. Even the Vedas, Upanishads are also saying very directly about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But you are trying to cover it indirectly. You're trying to speculate and trying to prove something which is not. So this is what I'm not able to understand you. Then there was a very intense debate that happens between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu starts giving his arguments and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya gives his arguments of the impersonalism. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cuts each and every argument. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that, you see, the Vedic literature is supposed to be taken as it is without interpretation. You cannot change it. You cannot interpret it. It's not required. Interpretation is required only when you don't understand something. You see, for example, the Vedic literature says that cow dung is pure. So there is no debate. Now I cannot go and do scientific research and prove that no, cow dung is not pure. This is not necessary, nor it is required. It is not necessary at all. Shabda Praman means Vedic. When the Vedas have said it, that's it. It's finished. Over. That is Veda. So as true as the Veda, they say. There is a saying like that. So that means there is nothing beyond the Pramana of the Veda. If the Veda says cow dung is pure, it is pure. That's it. So like that, when the Vedas are saying, when Bhagavad Gita is saying, when Krishna is saying, when the Bhagavatam is saying that, everything is coming from Krishna, there is no need to challenge that Vedic statement and try to give an indirect interpretation. Indirect interpretation is required when there is no clear understanding. When the understanding is very clear and very direct, there is no necessity to cover it with misinterpretation. But unfortunately, what has happened is all the Vedanta Sutras are covered with indirect explanations to prove that God is actually not personal, but he is actually impersonal. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes on and he says the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full of energies. He is the source of the living entities. He is the source of the material nature. He is the source of the internal energy. He is full of six opulences. And anybody who says that this Supreme Personality of Godhead is formless, such a person should be banned from the rituals. That is what our Vedas are saying. That if anybody says that Lord's form is actually not there, such a person is said to be a Pashandi. That is heretic. That means his understanding is heretic, and such a person should be actually immediately banned from doing karma kanda, and such a person should not even continue doing any kind of karma kanda rituals. So this is a very dangerous and a very outrageous philosophy to say that living entity is equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's a very outrageous conclusion actually. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya comes back and says, no, the Vedas, the Upanishads are saying the Mahavakyas, Tattvamasi, and Aham Brahmasmi, and like that he continues and says that there are these Mahavakyas. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, you see, the Mahavakyas of the Upanishads, there is only one Mahavakya of the Upanishad, that is Omkara. That is the Mahavakya. Omkara, Pranava. Krishna says, Pranava Sarva Vedeshu. This Omkara is the representation of Krishna. Right? So, therefore, ultimately the Vedas are saying the Mahavakya is the Omkara. Omkara is Krishna. And Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. And he is the cause for the creation, maintenance, and destruction. He is also the basis of the impersonal Brahman. So like that, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives an argument, Sarvam Bhattacharya is stunned. He's stunned. First time he's hearing such arguments. Never he heard such argument. He was completely stunned. And then he presents one shloka, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He says that Atmaramah Munayo, there's a very famous verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. And he says that Lord Krishna, he even attracts the self-realized souls. Even the self-realized souls who have lost attraction for everything, they get attracted by Krishna. Therefore, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. They are not attracted to anything but Krishna. Therefore, he says Krishna is the absolute truth. But for that shloka, Sarvam Bhattacharya gives 8 meanings by forming various combinations of different meanings from dictionary. For that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives 64 meanings. When he gives 64 meanings, Sarvam Bhattacharya is completely stunned and he starts to surrender and he says, it is not possible by a human being to do this kind of an analysis. I think you are the supreme personality of Godhead. For which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu shows his form of the supreme personality of Godhead to him. And he says that, yes, I have personally come to deliver you. You see, this has happened many times in the past. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, he has shown his form and he has explained to Sarvam Bhattacharya that impersonal theory is wrong. Similarly, we also see in the south that once there was an inquiry that was made to Lord Ranganath asking about this doubt. Dear Lord, are you personal or impersonal? Please tell me. This was an inquiry asked by one great devotee who was able to talk to Lord directly. And Lord gives a direct answer and the statements are still recorded. Right? He says in very, very clear terms that the supreme absolute truth is personal and that is me. So let's not be confused about this kind of a monistic deviant theories and come to the right conclusion based on the Bhagavad Gita. That's why it's called as Bhagavad Gita as it is. There's no interpretation or misinterpretation or trying to cover something which is not there. Okay, so this is a very important verse for us to realize the supreme absolute truth. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. If you have any questions, you can ask. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji.
Not pertaining to this lecture, but yesterday I saw a live Aarti in Mayapur. They were doing Abhishek of Krishna and Radha. At the same time, there is a small deity down in a silver cup dish with 2 eyes. What is that deity, Prabhuji?
Maybe Shaligram. I'm not sure, Mataji.
Okay, yes.
Could be Shaligram.
Shaligram of Krishna.
Most likely.
Giriraj, Prabhu.
Giriraj. Okay, Giriraj. Okay.
Giriraj.
Giriraj. Thank you, Prabhuji. It's
Giriraj
Giriraj.
is Giriraj. Okay. So nicely it was done. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.